You read the title. You got to stop paying rent. It is April 1st, the first of the month. Hi, y'all. I'm Frankie. The channel is Joy Route, as in live your best life as best you can. I'm currently living my best life, living mostly full time in a mini camper van that I converted to like my tiny home on wheels. I'm taking life 1 minute, 1 mile, and 1 cup of light roasted coffee at a time. Now, y'all go ahead and go outside and walk. And this podcast, I got a good one today. So go ahead and start your dinner or whatever, and just let this podcast play. Let the whole playlist play. I can't talk. Let the entire playlist play. So I'm going to share a personal story. It's about how I stopped paying rent. I gave away 75% of my things, and I moved into a 2-room storage and a van. And stick around because I'm going to give you some tips to live rent free. And y'all know what time it is. You got 5 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The landlord wants some money. So my hand, this is what happened. My hand was shaking as I signed a copy of my lease. And this was many years ago. And it was because it was the first time I had actually saw what I was paying a year. And I was paying $12,000 a year. My home base is Ohio. I know rents are higher in California. I lived there before. I know you might have higher rents. Not might, you do. New York, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. Rents are high. But for Ohio, a 2-bedroom apartment, $1,000 was very well. It was comparable to what it should be, but for working class people, as we know, rent is continuing to climb up to it's climbing up an unaffordable mountain. So what I did was I promised myself I would not sign another lease, and I didn't. So I started co-living with somebody, paying half of the rent, extra money to pay other bills, and treat myself. Now, y'all know, you've heard, your home is your castle, and it's also your prison if all you can afford to do is live there. All I did when I was in my apartment was go to work, then come home, sit at the kitchen table all night on weekends, trying to do one side hustle after another. It was exhausting. I despise the word hustle. I took a screenshot of something someone wrote on Twitter, and since this is a podcast, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. This person says, I have contributed around $160,000 to various landlords over the last 10 years as a renter. Never miss rent, can't qualify for a mortgage. It's not about coffee and Netflix. It's about a predatory system of housing that uses basic human rights as an investment opportunity. Ooh, child. So I'm going to share my personal journey of living in a storage and a van. And at the end of my personal story, I'm going to share some options that you may be interested in to not pay rent. So y'all know back in the day, small business owners, they used to occupy like those office buildings. And back then, you know, the insurance man, maybe the chiropractor, maybe a 2-person staffing agency, they wasn't going to have someone come to their home and sign papers and things like that. So they rented these office buildings, you know, these spaces in office buildings. But you know, as everything has gone online and people no longer need to meet in person, plus they can't afford to rent it. So somebody came up with the bright idea to turn these office spaces into storage. So my 2-room storage, it had carpet, it was indoors, it had carpets, it had walls. When I would show it to people, and there are pictures of it on my YouTube channel, people thought it was an apartment. They really did. And I was paying $200 a month for this storage space. And I thought, you know, when I'm not in the van and when I need to be somewhere alone, I could go in this space. But I thought about it. I was like, $200 is a lot cheaper than paying $1,000. I never did stay there, sleep in there, because I was creeped out being in a building by myself. And people have all types of reasons why they put stuff in storage. Companies put stuff in storage. They might close down. People clean out their houses, go fall in love, go take a whirlwind trip, all kinds of reasons. So this storage building, it would be like people there like on Saturdays and Sundays, but basically during the week, nobody was in these buildings. So I was too scared to spend the night, and I could have. So what else I want to say? 1 second. I didn't even have enough stuff to fill up the 2-room storage. I had a little table and a chair. At one point I had a cot, and I had my books, a couple of antiques, and that was it. And so to pay $200 for that was ridiculous. So I downsized again. I moved into a small storage, about the size of a big closet. And I paid $65 a month for that. When I'm in Ohio, my home base, I stay with my cousin. I have a room in my cousin's house. She says it's my room forever. I call it my winter room, although I try to never be in Ohio, in cold Ohio in the winter. And yes, I do pay her a pair of money, but it's definitely not. I have a sweet, sweet deal. So what do I mean by that? When I'm not here, I don't pay rent. And when I come back, I start back paying rent again. And this last road trip, yeah, I was on the road for 10 months. So I appreciate my cousin more than words could ever express. And y'all know everyone is feeling the pinch. Now check this out. A 2023 CNBC report states 63% of Americans cannot cover a $500 emergency expense. That figure is ticking in the wrong direction. Last time I read a report, it says 60% of Americans cannot afford a $600 expense. So you're seeing how the numbers of people who can't afford it has increased, and the number of what they can't afford has decreased. So I've explored some options for not paying rent, and I'm going to share some you might consider. Get a pen and paper. The first thing you might try is co-living. Get a roommate or rent a room. When all parties respect one another, it works. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it definitely works. And I used to like poo-poo the ideal of ever living with someone, but the rent is too damn high. So van life. This lifestyle isn't for everyone. Even if you can make it as comfy as you want. I have friends with luxurious vans. I converted my Honda Odyssey into a tiny Homes on Wheels. I'm getting a box truck, but for now, my van, Limo, the name of my van, and my winter room, it'll do. Another thing you might try is house sitting. House sitting works like this. You get to stay in a rich person's home and care for their pets while they travel. And some people travel for months. You usually aren't paid for a house sitting, but you get a fancy pool. I'm in a travel co-working group. A YouTuber, Stephanie, has introduced a few of the ladies to house sitting, and they like it. So check out Stephanie. How about a work exchange for housing? You work part-time for full-time housing. I haven't tried this one, and I have heard horror stories, so I'll pass on this one. And then let's talk about camp hosting. You clean fire pits and toilets to live at a campground. You are not compensated while camping with friends. And when I was camping with my friends, you are not compensated when camping with friends. You, as a camp host, you are not paid. But to stay on the campground, you clean the fire pits and the toilet, pick up litter, all that stuff. If I could work in registration or the gift shop, I would choose this option because I love campgrounds. Another option is a caregiver. You live and take care of someone in exchange for room and board. Not my cup of tea, except for my mom. I do it for my mom. Caregiving, you could also add nanny to that. You could work at a hotel. I know a YouTuber, Tim, and he works at hotels in touristy towns. He gets free accommodations and he gets some pay. Now, yeah, I was a housekeeper at 18 years old. It was back-breaking and grueling back then. And now I'm in the prime of my life, decades later. I know I could never be a housekeeper again. If you are on spring break or you're planning a summer vacation and you plan to stay at a hotel, Tip the housekeeper well. They work incredibly hard. Here's another option that some of my YouTube friends have: land ownership. I would love someday to buy land and live in a tiny home. I'm open to renting some land from somebody because I know some places that are dirt cheap. So I've given y'all the simple version of what rent-free options are, what they could look like, and the pros and cons kind of. And I didn't name all options like living and working on a cruise ship. I think I did say being a nanny. And there are a ton more rent-free or rent-cheap options. Each situation is different, so don't think every house that you get is going to be somebody rich. It could just be an average person. But just so do your homework is what I'm saying. Do your homework. And you hear people struggling. You hear people suggesting, well, don't pay rent. Just buy a house. Well, I did have that when I had my family, kids, and all that. It's easier said than done because y'all seen it. Y'all heard the tweet I read. So that's all for now. What y'all up to? What do y'all think about the housing crisis? Are you affected? Is your rent too damn high? Do tell in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all listening. My goal is to get 100 listeners every podcast episode. My goal is to get my channel from 7,000 to 8,000. And y'all can make that happen by sharing the podcast, by letting the podcast play while you do your exercise, while you cook, while you do hair or get your hair done. Listen to these podcasts. I thank you so much. And whatever you do and however you do it, I want you to take the joy route because, and I got to say this, life is short. It's really short. And if we really knew how short life was, we would be doing things differently. So thank you. Give a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next podcast.